We just finished the Passover and we're going on to the second feast, and that's the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. And this actually took place the night after Passover. The Feast of the Unleavened Bread, as well as the Feast of the Weeks, which will be the next festival, they were actually a package. It was like one long holiday, but there were different purposes for each. But for 7 days, they were to eat unleavened bread to remember that they had to come quickly out of Egypt, and they didn't have time for their yeast to rise. They had to eat flat bread. But again, it was, and when your son asks, what does this mean? You are to tell him it's to be a sign on your hand, a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the land may be in your mouth, that the strong hand of the Lord brought you out of Egypt. And so that's really what he, again, it's remembering what God has done for you. Remember who you are. And then we go on to the first fruits. And this is often called first fruits or the wave offering, the festival of the wave offering. And this is to acknowledge the fertility of the land given to Israel. And this was what they would do after fasting from leaven for 7 days. They were to offer up the first fruits. It was a harvest festival. Before they took anything for themselves, they were to offer up the sheaves and wave it before the Lord as if they were giving, what I have in my hand belongs to you. And it was a harvest festival. And again, it said, and you are to remember this throughout all generations. And then we go into the fourth festival, which is the Feast of Weeks. And this was 50 days after the first fruits offering. And that's why it's also called Pentecost. But this feast marks the end of the harvest. And there's a second offering made to God, and this is the only time that leavened bread is offered to God. So there are 2 loaves and 7 lambs, and they're offered as a sin offering. And this festival is unique in that it not only is an offering to God for sin offerings, but they were also commanded in their harvest that they were not to harvest up to the boundary. This is where God told them, leave some of the food for the poor and for the stranger who's passing through your land. And so that's such a good reminder to us as we deal with the poverty all around us, as well as so many refugees all around us. The fifth festival was the festival of the trumpets from Leviticus 23 and 24. And this was, it says, speak to the people of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, on the 1st day in the month, you will observe a solemn day of rest. A memorial proclaims the blast of trumpets, a holy convocation, another sacred gathering. And what they're doing is they're preparing for the next festival a couple weeks later, which is the Day of Atonement, and that's in Leviticus 23, 26, and 28. And that's this Day of Atonement is the most holy festival of the Israelites. It's the holiest day of the year of them, and they participate in some kind of self-affliction, such as fasting or self-discipline, to show their repentance and self-deprivation, and because they're desiring atonement. And a penalty for this is penalty for not observing this, would they'd be cut off from the community. And so it was very serious, and again, to be celebrated for all generations. And the last festival is the Festival of the Booths. And the Booths means Sukkot, and it means to cover over. And it says it's a statute forever throughout all your generations. So generations may know the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of Egypt. Offerings were made each day, and setting up in the booths were to remind them of their wilderness wanderings. And of course it was a joyous feast after the Day of Atonement, after the atonement, to remind them they were forgiven and chosen by God.